Right. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. And in Durban, as I was telling those that were early on to log on, it is quite cold. And I think that was where I got the inspiration to do this particular topic again, because in cold weather, people tend to stay indoors and they, as a result, hardly exercise. They might eat all the wrong food and they don't get any sunshine. So I've entitled this Osteopenia and Associated Changes or Challenges. And there's a little note there, subscript, to say, be inspired to approach life with the future in mind. You know, it is so easy to forget that you want to live well into the future. So please be inspired to approach life with the future in mind. My name is Dr. Esa Zanambasi, medical doctor by training. By conviction, I think I'm doing what I would have loved to be doing all my life. So I decided that, yeah, from the time I started doing Neolife or being associated with Neolife, I would stay right there and even grow, because I think their vision and mission is correct. So, are you approaching the age of 60 and even over? Note that even if that's 30 years away, the answer to that is yes, you are approaching that age. So I thought I'd start with foods that are bad to the bone and must be avoided, or at least greatly reduced. And I've put a Bible verse there, which if you all can read it, it says, teach a child the way he should go. And when he grows up, he will not depart from that way. Okay, so what are those foods? The first one, everybody loves, carbonated drinks. For goodness sake, they are very bad for the bones. They contain phosphoric acid and high amounts of sugar, which cause increased acidity of the blood. Now, when that happens, to maintain balance, the body actually pulls calcium from the bones. And so I always feel very sad to see children being given them as frequently as they are, because that sets them up for a lifetime later on of agony. And just to remind you, soft drinks are called soft because they lack calcium. I found that quite an interesting pun. Then table salt, yeah? Foods that have high amounts of sodium also are a challenge, because sodium leads to loss of more bone minerals. And people with the habit of eating salty foods are more prone to osteoporosis. And osteopenia, by the way, if you remember the webinar we had on sarcopenia, which means poverty of muscles, osteo is Latin, I suppose, for bone, and penia is poverty, so poverty of bones. And then there is an estimate, I suppose some scientists estimated this, that, okay, there's somebody writing on my screen, that for every about 2.5 grams, 2,300 milligrams of salt or sodium chloride, about 40 grams of 40 milligrams of calcium is lost in urine and stool. That is a whopping amount. So if on a daily basis you're losing that amount of calcium but not replacing it, imagine what your bones are up to. So the suggestion is that change from ordinary table salt, you know, the one that is sold commercially, and perhaps change your ways of salting your food to pink salt or Himalayan salt. Some people call it Himalayan salt, because in there, there's several other minerals and trace elements which will help to maintain bone health. Right, and then the next thing is excessive caffeine. Now that can come either as too much coffee, or it can come as those other drinks, all those so-called energy drinks that give people a boost. But because of the caffeine, it is estimated that every 100 milligrams of caffeine consumed results in a loss of about 6 milligrams of calcium. So we have a very good case when you're talking to your guests and your loved ones to say that there is a very good reason to supplement, to offset the losses that are occurring as a result of their habit. But obviously the first prize is to kick the habit. And then hydrogenated oils and fats, also known as processed oils and fats such as margarine. Man-made fats should not be confused with naturally occurring fats found in coconut oil, olive oil, and within animal products such as ghee and butter, if it's real butter. But synthetic fats do serious damage because they do not contain vitamin K, which is of the bone building nutrients. So here's a very good reason to read your labels, please. Read your labels carefully. Right, then let's move on. This is going to disappoint a lot of people, but sorry, let's go back to the previous. Yes, it's going to disappoint a lot of people, but I've been talking about our ideas about wheat and wheat products. Now, here's another good reason to perhaps reduce it if you want to reduce inflammation to your gut and other parts of you. Wheat contains phytates, which prevent absorption of calcium. Phytates are something within the wheat kernel or germ, with the wheat seed, which is ground up, obviously, to give us our flour. But it's mainly found in the bran, in the outer coating. So, all of us have been brought up knowing that a good big bowl of cereal with milk is good. Sure, I'm sure it's very good. But if you give a phytates containing food together with a calcium containing food such as milk, the milk calcium will not be absorbed because the phytates ensure that they are stopped. Okay, so that was quite a phytates are also found in beans, and some people may be particularly affected by those phytates as well. So it's important to just do a bit of research and find out what food combinations should be avoided or what you should be aware of. Okay, so let's assume that we are all heading towards 60. I believe that there is no single segment of our society that can benefit more from regularly performed exercise and improved diet than elderly people. And since I said, even if 60 is 30 years away, it's good to start exercising and establishing those habits early. Because we know that many elderly really wish to spend their later years healthy and to achieve what they set out to achieve. And in order for we can actually encourage that to happen so that they can enjoy a healthy and prosperous life. Factors that might hamper that, the elderly from leading a healthy life include various psychological and social problems that occur in older age, such as loneliness, depression, and ill health. And as a result, it sets up a cycle which causes a high incidence of disease, because if they're not exercising and they're not eating well, and then they become depressed, obviously, it can only spiral downwards. So having that awareness and encouraging, and I just want to ask you all on the call to go back into your communities and actually see how to implement and get your relatives and friends to implement what we learn on these webinars. Then I did say that, I said that I was inspired to do this webinar because of the season we happen to be in and notorious for people to become vitamin D deficient. And already most people are vitamin D deficient. At an estimate, about 60% of people have vitamin D deficiency. So we have to remember that and encourage mobility and getting out in the sun. So here are some common triggers for disease conditions. You know them all. We've mentioned them. Inadequate nutrients, inadequate mobility, hormone imbalances, bacterial overgrowth, heavy metal toxins, high blood sugar, especially if they're doing too much of those cool drinks. And then infections, we've learned about phytates to add to the list of that. Now let's look specifically at bones. There are 3 bone and joint discomfort triggers. Bone and joint discomfort triggers. Chronic joint inflammation. Mark the word inflammation because you will hear it again. And then worn out, deteriorating cartilage. And that can be age-related or it can be lifestyle-related or as a result of the things that we've just mentioned above. And then gradual bone loss, also known as osteoporosis, what we are generally talking about today. And then you might remember when we mentioned sarcopenia, that is another association with osteoporosis. As people grow older, they tend to lose muscle bulk, particularly if their nutrition and their exercise habits are inadequate. And then they tend to gain a lot of fat because as they grow older, so too does the accumulation of toxins in the body. And that's why we, in this family, are big on detox processes, either in our environment or in ourselves, the inner environment, as I like to call it. So here's this gentleman, elderly, but he might be already sedentary, seated. I don't know what his habits are, but they are the people that I would like you and us and all of us to reach out to with this information. And I hope the guests on the call are many in that age category. Right. Now, here's a question. Most people in that age category are already on quite a lot of chronic medications, but have you considered the risks and side effects associated with chronic medication? Have you thought about it at all and thought to yourself, what are we doing? All right. So non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs that everybody knows about, such as ibuprofen, aspirin, all those ones. They work by reducing the production of a chemical that is made in us called prostaglandins. Okay, that chemical in the body causes inflammation to happen and pain and fever. That is what we recognize as the inflammatory response, which in past webinars, we've mentioned that it is important in the acute state to have that inflammatory response, because that's how the body gathers marshals all the cells to come and deal with whatever is causing the irritation. Okay, but these drugs actually try to reduce that process. And then we have the newer ones, which in some countries have actually been discontinued because of what was observed as side effects and risks. They are selective inhibitors and are associated with, as they've put it, a significant reduction in gastro, that is the stomach, and duodenal, the duodenum, damage compared with the traditional NSAIDs, NSAIDs, as we like to call them. But the fact remains, and this is what I wanted to emphasize, they are associated risks and side effects. Okay, so when you're thinking about all this and when you're talking to your friends, relatives, clients, yourselves, consider that. It might be a quick fix for a pain, but when they are used chronically, it's not a good idea, not at all. And so just as a reminder, where ulcers can happen in the stomach, in the duodenum, they can be just superficial or they can be deep into the muscle. And all that because of trying to stop a natural process when there are better ways, which we shall explore. So examples of side effects: heart, liver, kidney, and brain failure, manifesting as all those things: diabetes, high blood pressure, really, stress, anxiety, and depression, the topic for last week. And eventually, with a bit of persuasion, many patients have been tempted and even encouraged to take injections into joints, and also a suggestion that maybe surgery may be the answer to that problem. So what we are talking about in this presentalities, wouldn't that be wonderful? So the ideal combines sufficient exercise and a healthy diet. There is no taking a shortcut with that one, especially if one can start teaching the children early. So physical activity and nutrient intake are important throughout life, and many alterations in physiological structure and function that occur with age may result from disuse and disability, as well as from diets deficient in energy, protein, and other specific nutrients. And when we talk about disuse and disability, one has to consider that it isn't just the bone we're talking about. We're talking about the joints and the muscles surrounding those joints, and between the joints, inside the joint, is what we call cartilage. All those get affected and lead to quite debilitation. Okay, so although a healthy diet can provide significant health benefits, diet alone is not sufficient to provide optimal health. And on the other hand, if everybody is eating and rather not hardly eating the right food, but physically exercising a lot, like, gardening or farming and walking long distances, but the diet is unhealthy, then obviously there's going to be a challenge. So we have a lot of empowerment opportunities, and I've mentioned them in one way or another, not only in this presentation, but in previous ones. Avoid glutens and other allergy or sensitivity causing foods. Avoid refined sugar. Guys, refined sugar causes acidity of the blood. Eliminate triggers or causes of estrogen dominance. There are so many. We'll talk about them. And then support the immune and the hormonal systems. We've seen that that is one of the reasons that things can go wrong. And then, of course, supplementation with omega-3, antioxidants, and other bone, muscle, and joint nutrients. So those are the empowerment opportunities. And one that I like to talk about is to get back to the basics. I think that should become my middle name, back to basics. Let us become more involved in growing food, particularly our vegetables, so that our intake of fresh vegetables will give us all the magnesium in our diet and the calcium. And as we do that, we become more physically active. And so this is an example of a good carbs diet where you see all these on top. We should be doing a lot of them, and very little of the starchy and whole grains. And now you've learned about phytates, but there are elements of the whole grain that we need, such as the lipids and sterols that we will talk about. And that's where supplementation comes in. That is the Neolife Wellness Pyramid. It tells us physical activity and weight management should be supporting the base of our health. We should be eating whole grains or the important part of the whole grain that I'm going to show you, and avoiding those that are not very beneficial, fruits and vegetables, and very little of the processed sugars and fats. Okay, now the typical lifestyle pyramid, and this is for the benefit of the guests, looks something like that, where we're doing too much of fats and sugars. And if the fats are processed, they're killing the body and the way it functions, particularly the bones. And then typically we do very little activity. We've all adopted a relatively sedentary lifestyle. So what happens is that all of us are supposed to be born with a high level of energy. And then unfortunately, as time goes on, we slip quite rapidly into the tired and the sick zones, losing out on so many years of what we could be doing plenty with. All that time is lost because we are feeling below par. We are feeling not 100%, okay? And so Neolife is what we want to introduce you to, but the question I always like to ask is, who can we trust? Because there's so much out there. Quite recently, I was invited to speak in a webinar, and somebody was wanting to know the difference between what we have and what they can walk into any supermarket or any pharmacy to buy. And they just wanted to know. Well, I would have you know that anywhere between 95 and 98% of supplements out there are synthetic. And so they do you no good. So whom we have chosen to trust as a family is the Scientific Advisory Board. These are scientists that research and develop everything. The founder was an amazing scientist who founded oral chemotherapy. Such is his fame. But he came across to Neolife and transformed the way any company has ever done nutrition, leading the way with so many world firsts, including some of what we're going to show you now. So yes, they have focused on healthy cell nutrition, and they are aware that whole grain oils are very important because without them, our cells become unhealthy, including the bones and joints and the muscles and everything. And when that happens, we are in trouble. But Trianen, the flagship product, is what we are famous for. And whenever you are starting anybody on a nutrition to start with, otherwise, if you start with anything else, that would be quite a waste of money. So why we need lipids and sterols that are found in Trianen? They are critical components for cells that support the transport of nutrients into and waste out of cells. So they increase nutrient utilization, increase the energy as a result of the more efficient nutrient utilization. They support cellular health. And of course, they enhance vitality through and through. A lot of studies have been done. So what we have and where we all start, and nobody should be asking this question that, what should I give so-and-so who has a situation? This is where to start. And you can be kind and polite and say, what is your budget? Then if the budget is small, then you've just heard it. Start with Trianen. It is totally affordable and it is life-changing. So these are our core products and they have Trianen in them. Pro Vitality has Trianen. It has omega-3 salmon oil. It has carotenoid complex, which is extracts of fruits and vegetables. And then it has vitamins and minerals, which otherwise we call cofactors. And last week's webinar, which was quite fascinating, I'm sure, went to a bit of detail about how everything works together to help us overcome stress, anxiety, and depression. So that's where we are working at. And then Let's look at inflammation for a little bit. Inflammation causes a lot of havoc and ultimately affects the bones. You might remember when we did heavy metal poisoning, that the bones are an area in our body where a lot of heavy metals collect, such as lead, okay? All those lead to the inflammatory process, and if we are approaching 60 and over, even if it's 30 years to come, we need to be aware of these things. So the solutions we have to avoid too much inflammation in the house is this most amazing set of cleaning products, very cost effective, non-toxic, 100% biodegradable. I mean, who doesn't want to make that kind of difference? Okay. Anyway, that's my story. I started right here because I had decided I did not want to poison my little children. So I started with this. And as I saved money, which was quite astounding, I could then invest into more and more of the nutrition supplements. So that's just a tip. Start correctly. Start in your house. So for example, did you know that a 2-kilo bag of G1 laundry will give you over 133 machine washes? It is also great for hand washing. Plus, as a bonus, it is amazing in the dishwasher. Just half a teaspoon plus a squirt of LDC that was on the previous picture gives you, that is LDC, gives you all the dishes in your dishwasher, if you use a dishwasher, clean, and you just save money and avoid the toxins that can poison your bones and joints. So the importance of calcium, we can now go into the actual nutrients. Ours is double amino chelated. In other words, the scientists that we talked about gave us a very highly absorbable calcium supplement. Most of the other ones that are bought over the counter, you're lucky to get 5 or 6% absorption. The rest is dumped and can lead to issues like stones, kidney and gallstones, and other challenges, including into the joint spaces, causing that inflammation of the joints that we are discussing. So non-chelated, very low absorption. Chelated, highly absorbed. And the significance is that it is also less irritating to the stomach and the intestines, and it is rapidly disintegrated, dissolved, and dispersed so that it gets to work. So that's our CalMag, a very, very good product. It has vitamin D, and it is in the right ratio. 2:1 is the ratio that has been shown to be most efficient. Then I wanted to talk about vitamin D. And this is the older brand, which was non-vegan. Vitamin D is very important for bone health. But now we have the vegan variety. So as I mentioned, about 60% of the population is actually vitamin D deficient. So you can tell them, I hope you have it in all the markets, that vitamin D is available even for the vegan population. Magnesium, very, very important as a bone building nutrient. Lipotropic adjunct, I want us to make a discovery of this amazing product. When we did stress, anxiety, and depression, I brought it up and I bring it up again. It will help to, it'll help the liver to work more efficiently so that hormones are broken down efficiently and they don't build up, because we've pointed out that one of the reasons for inflammation is imbalance and sparkling and clean. You want that because as those ones are feeding the joints, the bones, the muscles, they need to actually supply the nutrients there. And that is one of the things that happens as we all approach older age. And then of course, omega-3. I need to stress it again. You saw it in the Pro Vitality, but it is very, very important for bone, joints, and overall health. It is crucial for those who want to lose weight, for weight management. Absolutely. Then vitamin C for building collagen. C stands for collagen. You've heard me say that a few times. Yes, you need your vitamin C. And with it, if you can, listen, I'm showing you all these things just to show you what is possible and hopefully to encourage all of us to really get out there and talk to people about what we've got so that we can get them off the quick fixes and get them onto what really works. So flavonoid complex is an amazing product. It complements vitamin C and it does a lot of things in the body as an antioxidant. So it keeps the cartilage and other watery parts of the body well antioxidated. And then you have this little trio that I decided to put together. Multi-mineral plus alfalfa. A very cost-effective product. Alfalfa has the advantage in that it has very, very deep roots. And so it is able to access minerals from deep in the earth, in the ground, okay? And so it also has a lot of vitamin K, and it has various other things like folic acid, iron, and potassium, and all those bone and blood building nutrients that are required. So I put them together like this because botanical balance, flavonoid, and multi-mineral work so well to control pain. And so for those people who are looking for something that will work instead of those NSAIDs that we mentioned that create havoc in the body, this is a good combination, either part of or the whole of it. And then full motion. Wow, what an amazing product. In it, there is boron. Boron is a mineral that helps to support the processes that build strong bones. And it specifically targets osteoarthritis, and it also helps to build lean muscle, which is important. You don't want osteopenic obesity, where the muscles are not nice and lean. You need to have them nice and strong, okay? It has what we call the comfort complex. It has, I actually brought a bottle here. It has something called the a herbal comfort complex, HCC. And there are various herbs in there that have been studied to help with bone and joint health. So that's another good one. And then I'm talking about rehydration. A lot of people use too many of those other very sweet things. We have aloe vera and we have Neolife tea, which are both amazing products. And we have, obviously, instead of drinking sodas and very sweet drinks, water, pure water, very good for us. This is just a reminder about teaching the children about good nutrients. We have to start early so that when we are over 60, we can still have a smile on our face. Because this is the Neolife vision, to end the trend of chronic disease. And as you look at this slide, I would like us to really consider that this is what we are aiming for. We aim to create an age-free society where everyone can play an active role, rather than having a portion of the population debilitated and very sick in bed. It is very expensive, very, very expensive, not only financially, but also emotionally. So let us take our mission seriously, ladies and gentlemen, to make the world a healthier and happier place. I'd like to thank you, and I'll stop sharing.